Alrighty, what's going on, guys? Lynn Ray here. So this is my second time recording this video. I did it probably about 2 hours ago and watched Rambo Last Blood, which is an amazing movie, and finished watching the movie, went on to my OBS studio to look at the video I recorded previously, and it was recorded with no sound. So yeah, so here we are doing it one more time. Again, Rambo Last Blood, great movie. Super gory, but great movie. Alright, anyway, so what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about building a network using Router on a Stick, which has two VLANs. They will be VLAN 10 and VLAN 20. I'm going to put this in the center of the screen so it's a little bit more visible. But what we have here is a very basic network. We're going to use one Cisco 1921 router. These are all physical devices. I do have them to the right of me here. Hopefully they're not too loud. The switches are super obnoxious sometimes. Very loud. So the router is a 1921 Cisco router. These two switches are both layered 3 switches. They are the Cisco 3750Xs. We're not going to use them as layer 3 switches. We're just going to use them as just the standard layer 2 switches. And we have two end devices or two clients hooked up. The MacBook is already set up with the proper IP address, subnet mask, and default gateway. And we will set this PC up. This is the PC that I'm on. We'll set it up in a few minutes here. We just want to go over the topology here. So again, we've got the router. We're going to set it up on interface G0. We're going to set up the sub interfaces with this IP address for VLAN 10 and this IP address, the .126 for VLAN 20. It's going to connect to the switch G5023. Again, this is a trunk port, right? And this right here will also be a trunk port, or trunk interface. And these two interfaces here will actually be access points or access interfaces. Access interfaces are generally used for the end clients, whereas the trunks are used to connect like a network device to another network device. Switch to switch, router to switch, that type of thing, router to router. Alright, so that's pretty much how it's going to look. I have all the numbers here, everything that's going to be configured. VLAN 10 is going to be on ports 1 through 12 on both switches, and VLAN 20 will be 13 through 22 on both switches. Again, just for clarification, I only have 2 devices hooked up. I'm actually using physical devices, so this is the PC that I'm on. This is my MacBook next to me. And I'll have my PC set up on switch 1 and my MacBook set up on switch 2. So without further ado, let's go ahead and set these up. So we're going to go into my PuTTY. I've already factory reset all of these, and I'm going to slide this over so that it is a little bit visible on the right hand side of the screen here, and I'll also have PuTTY up on the other side of the screen. So we're going to first start off by setting up the router. It's asking if I'd like to enter the initial configuration dialog. We're going to put no because we're going to manually input all of the configurations. So we'll give it a second here, and I do hope the switch isn't too loud. Sometimes it takes about 20-30 seconds to get up and running here. All right, there we have it. So it's all set up and ready to go. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up the router, and we're going to configure interface 00, and then sub interface 00.10 and 00.20 with these configurations here. All right. So we're going to go into here, go into configuration, and then we're actually going to, oops, that didn't work. There we go. Just gonna call it R1 just to make it a little bit easier to recognize and also match what's up here on the screen on Packet Tracer. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into interface G0/0 and we're going to enable it using the no shutdown. You could also just do no shut, which is what I normally do. And as you can see here, the interface opens up. I should also add, I have all the wires connected already. I'll probably just put a picture of that on the screen just to kind of show you what the setup looks like. Alright, so now that G00 is enabled, now we want to set up the sub interface for VLAN 10. So in order to do that, we want to go to int G0/0 .10. We want to go into there. So now we are into the sub interface. And then we want to enable the .1Q encapsulation. So oops, sorry, I didn't do that correctly. So we want to do the .1Q. I forgot to put in the VLAN. So also just a point of note, as you can see here, I'm in interface G00.10. And I just set up the encapsulation for VLAN 10. So just a note, this number can actually be whatever you want it to be, but it's probably a good practice just to have it as whatever the VLAN is that you're trying to configure. It makes it a little bit easier to identify that .10 is for VLAN 10. Okay, so we have that set up, so encapsulation .10. And now we want to set up the IP address for VLAN 10. And as you can see here on the right hand side of the screen, it's 10.0.0.62 with a subnet mask of 255.255.255.192. And just so you know, I've already done the subnetting. I'm using the last usable IP address for the first subnet as the router, and then the first usable IP address as the IP address for the end device or the client device. Okay, so there's that one. So that one's all done and up, ready to rock and roll. So now I'm going to configure VLAN 20 sub interface. So in order to do that, it's just very similar. G0/0.20. Actually, it's int, so interface G00.20. And we want to do the encapsulation .1Q and 20. And again, as I said, a good practice is to make the sub interface the same number as the actual VLAN. Okay, I'm going to set the IP address. And it's 10.0.0.126 255.192. Alright, so far router 1 is configured. Router 1 needs no other configurations. Actually, sometimes, I'm not sure what it is, but sometimes the router won't actually function properly without no shutdown. I'm not sure why that is, but typically because I did the no shutdown command here, we shouldn't have to do no shutdown down here. But I've run into that scenario once or twice. I'm not sure why it does that or why it did that. So anyways, just putting it there. It's not really needed, but for my sanity later on when I try to connect or ping, I just want to make sure it actually works. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to configure switch 1, the G5023 interface. So this has been factory reset as well. Switch 1. So we're going to configure G5023. And we want to configure this as a trunk interface. So in order to do that, switch mode, switch port mode trunk. And here we have our first issue. It says an interface whose trunk encapsulation is auto cannot be configured to trunk mode. So in order to configure this to trunk mode, we've got to do a different command. We've got to do a switch port trunk. It's encapsulation .1Q, enter, and now the encapsulation has been configured to .1Q. We want to go ahead and ensure that it is a trunk port, and as we can see here, boom, it is working. So now 5023 on switch 1 is up. And the next thing we want to do is we want to allow the VLANs we want to be going through this particular trunk port. So I'm going to do that is switch trunk, allowed, VLAN 10 and 20. Okay, so we want VLAN 10 and 20 to be able to go through this particular interface. So we go switch port trunk allowed VLAN 10, 20. All right. So from the top here to this interface, it's all complete. So this leg is complete. Next, I'm going to go ahead and configure VLAN 10 access points. So G501 through G5012. And when you want to do a range of numbers, right, you have to do interface range versus up here where I have just int, right, interface. So a range, you want to do interface range. So we're going to configure VLAN 10 first. Switch port mode, and we want these to be access ports. And access ports again are used for the end clients or the end devices. So it has now been configured as a access port, these ports, and now we want to configure them for VLAN 10. As you can see here, access VLAN 10 does not exist, and so it has created a VLAN 10, which is great. And the same thing, we want to do the VLAN 20. through 22, and the same thing, we want to make these access ports, and then we want to make sure that they are access ports for VLAN 20. And we should, and we have it here, access VLAN does not exist, creating VLAN 20. So now we have VLAN 20, and technically, actually, no, I take that back. I did not set up my MacBook here, excuse me, my Windows PC, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now, so that way we can have this whole, these two legs here configured, and then we'll set up the trunk port and the access port for the other switch. So we're going to just go in here, and we are going to actually configure my Windows PC to have the proper IP address, subnet mask, and default gateway. And so it's 10.0.0.1 255.192, and our default gateway is 10.0.0. What was it? 62. We're going to press OK, OK, close. All right. So currently, this is all set up. The router set up. The PC is set up. This switch is almost set up. We still have to configure 5/0/24, which is the trunk port that will go to the other switch. So okay, and again, we have to configure the encapsulation to be .1Q. Oops. All right, so that's good. You want to configure it to be a trunk port. Boom, and there we have it. That interface is coming up. It is now a trunk port. And now we want to configure which VLANs we want to allow through that interface. Okay. All right. So currently, let's go back to our packet tracer here. Currently, this router, this switch, and this PC are completely configured. So there's nothing left to do here. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to configure this switch. And also, we don't need to do the MacBook because I've actually already done the MacBook. But let's go back to our PuTTY device. Actually, now that I remembered, I have to change out the wires and set up PuTTY to be on this particular switch. It'll take me like 2 seconds. I'm just going to disconnect it here. All right, so we've already done that. I'm going to go ahead and open up PuTTY again. And we're going to go to COM6 because let's make that a little larger. That way it's visible. Okay. So we are now on switch 2, which is up and running already. All right. So let's go ahead and change the host name to switch 2. All right. Now we're going to configure 4023 first to be the other end of the trunk, which is obviously connected to the switch G5024. Okay, so we already have the same issue. Switch port, trunk, encap. We have to make sure this is encapsulation 1Q. And then we can turn it on. We can make it a switch port. We're going to go ahead and continue. And we are going to configure the VLANs for this particular port. Oops, I didn't put a space there. All right, so let's go ahead and just check and see what's going on, because normally something would have popped up there. All right. G04023. And that's strange. All right, so let's see, do show Interface is trunk. Okay, we gotcha. All right, so nothing popped up because I don't actually have the access points connected or configured. So let's do that. Go ahead and configure the access points. And we're going to say G/0/1 through 12. And again, we're going to configure these to be access points. And then we're going to configure these ports interfaces to be for VLAN 10. There we go. Now it's created. So here we have it. So now we're good to go. All right. So we're going to configure VLAN 20 now. To 22. Make these access points. Now we're going to make them access points for VLAN 20. And here we have it. It's configured. All right. So now let's, as you can see there, the state was changed up. So now we can look at the interfaces and see. All right, perfect. Now we have 1020, 1020, 1020, which we didn't have earlier. And now we should have 10 and 20. Perfect. All right, so that's why I was kind of jumping the gun. So everything looks perfect and set up. So just as a rundown, kind of show you what we have here. I'll put it in the center of the screen. Everything's pretty much been set up. Now I should be able to go onto my Windows PC, which is what I'm on right now, and I should be able to ping the router or ping the MacBook that I have over here. So what I'm going to do before I do that is I'm actually going to plug up the PC, and give me 2 seconds. Just give it a few seconds. It's still blinking with the bright orange light. That means it's still connecting. And while I'm waiting on that, I'm just going to go ahead and type in the first commands for the, that's it, that's 65. All right, so we're good. We've got green lights. I'm going to go ahead and press enter now, and I should be able to ping the MacBook, which is at 10.00.65. Let's see what happens. And boom, and we have it. So I am able to ping the MacBook, and you can see, I mean, obviously if I can ping the MacBook, I should be able to ping everything else. So 126, which is the router interface. I didn't put ping. As you can see there, it works out well. And we can also do a broadcast type deal, but it's not really necessary. Actually, I guess it won't work because there are no other PCs on this particular VLAN. So, makes sense. Or sorry, not PCs. There are no other end clients or clients on this VLAN, so there's really nothing that's going to respond back to it. So we can also ping the router interface. If I would remember to put in ping. As we can see here, I can ping my router, both interfaces of the router, and I can also ping the MacBook. So anyways, that's it. That is how to set up a router on a stick with 2 VLANs. You can have as many VLANs as you want, obviously, with multiple interfaces configured using trunk ports and access points. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to y'all next time. Peace.